Shorelines change. There are ebbs and flows. Sand gets washed away and then redeposited. But at the micro beach shoreline, which stretches from American Memorial Park past Hyatt and Crowne Plaza, the ebb seems to steadily be getting worse.
This is a relic of what used to be a marine sports operator tent or concessionaire. And they used to be set up around that area there. And now, because the erosion is getting worse, they have to relocate. So it's just such a sad situation for them too, because the shoreline is losing its function due to that huge loss that's happening each storm.
Mary Arena helps manage coastlines in the NMI, and she says one area of particular concern is here at Micro Beach in front of Hyatt. It has been consistently losing beachfront the last few years.
The Division of Coastal Resources Management actually monitors this site, and we've seen significant loss in the past few years since we started in 2017. And there was actually, we're seeing beach retreat of about more than 60 feet. So right here in this this feature here is what we call the berm. You can also think of it as when the waves come and start chipping at the shoreline. As you can see, it's pretty steep. We've actually seen this feature out by about 60 feet towards the water. And that, if you think about it, that's how much volume of beach we've lost. We capture that using survey techniques to see that shoreline change. And the worst part is that we haven't actually really seen deposition of sand that usually happens with a healthy shoreline.
Trees and their root system are part of the natural shoreline protection, but these big trees are now gone, and storms and high tides are expected to now further erode the beach at a faster clip, directly impacting one of the NMI's major recreational areas on Saipan.
Now this beach is actually wanting to go more inland over time. And that's something that we have to consider in our management and planning. There's actually a project proposed by the Office of Planning and Development that intends to study this stretch of shoreline from Micro Beach all the way to IPI, so that we can understand what interventions are best to addressing this issue that we're seeing with the shoreline erosion, and also considering the use of it, considering what the community wants, how they want to use this place.
Robbie Green studies and produces spatial data. He says that 3 straight years of La Nina have had a major impact on shorelines here. This phenomenon occurs as strong winds blow warm water at the ocean surface away from South America across the Pacific towards Indonesia. It's the opposite of the El Niño weather pattern and can have a significant effect on weather across the entire planet.
What happens when we have La Nina? Essentially the trade winds that come over from the eastern Pacific, they start pushing all the water over to this part of the Pacific. So Micronesia, we see elevated sea levels. And if La Nina persists, those elevated sea levels persist. So over the last 3 years, in general, when you look at a high tide here, it's generally 6 to 8 inches above where it would normally be. And we see that data come through on the tide gauges. What that means for the shoreline is essentially we're simulating future climate change. So the sea levels we're seeing in Saipan right now are kind of what we'd expect 50 to 70 years from now as a normal sea level. Right now we're kind of living in sort of a simulated climate change scenario. And what happens when we have these elevated sea levels, you get a little bit of wave action, the sand gets suspended in the water column, and normally when the water calms down a little bit, you'd see that sand redeposited on the beach. So we'd get a little bit of erosion, a few weeks later it would start to be redeposited on that same stretch of beach, and beach would kind of build back. We haven't seen that in the last 3 years. So I think we're at a point where folks are really starting to consider, how do we protect our shoreline?
This chart shows the predicted sea levels, that color is in blue, and the actual sea levels, that level is in green.
There's sort of a spectrum of options that we consider when we talk about shoreline stabilization. The These kind of range from sort of a green approach with sort of minimal modification of the shoreline. Essentially, you're just encouraging growth of vegetation and kind of managing that retreat. You still expect some loss, but ideally you're slowing it down enough to where you can figure out if you want to take more drastic measures in terms of armoring the shoreline. At the other end of the spectrum, you have places like American Samoa where folks have gone in and actually built seawalls simply because they have no room to retreat back further inland. They're right up against the mountains. We have a little bit of space to work with here, but as you can see over by the hotels, we're running out. So there have been a number of proposals for different shoreline modifications over the years here. Those have ranged from sort of a gray infrastructure seawall along Beach Road to what the National Park Service has kind of adopted here, which is sort of, you know, let's let the vegetation be where it is, see if it helps protect the shoreline a little bit, and we'll slowly retreat back. The big thing we need to do in the meantime is get some more advanced modeling of shoreline processes here done.
The beach retreat has left a number of relics in its path, and there's quite a bit of debris in the water and in the area, ranging from concrete anchors to trees and debris, issues that will need solutions in the coming days and weeks. Chris Nelson for the Channel 2 News.